What up? What up? How's everybody doing? Can everybody hear me? Can everybody see me? Okay, so there are a few things that I'm still trying to pull up. So I'm gonna just chat with y'all while I pull them up because I went on Twitter and a lot of y'all were like, yeah, we want to hear the graphic details of the Shannon Sharpe case. We don't care if it's hard to listen to, hard to read, so on and so forth, which it is, I promise you. So I'm just trying to make sure that I can get that up on screen, which I know it feels like every time I go live, it's something, right? But I just want y'all to be able to read along. And there's also a chance that I might just be like, okay, y'all got to read this part. I can't say it out loud. So that's all I'm trying to finalize, and then we can get going. I'll see a few of y'all are watching. If you're on the YouTube side, please say hi in the chat. Um, and as usual, let me know if you can't hear me. Because as usual, this is still a one woman production. And I know I mentioned something on Twitter about this possibly being my last live for a long time. And I will explain more of what I mean by that at the end. But it's all to the good. Even if it's kind of not that great, like I still attribute it to a good thing. Give me 1 second. I think we almost got this thing ready to go. I'm going to just upload it to my Google Drive. And then that way we should be able to get it going. All right. Okay. I think we're all good to start. So we've got quite a lineup of topics. Let me go ahead and pull that up too. As my thumbnail suggests, we're going to talk about the draft. We're going to talk about Shitter Sanders. We are going to talk probably a lot about Shannon Sharpe, depending on what questions y'all have. I know it feels like all the details of that case are already out. But as usual, there are things in the lawsuit that don't always get exposed to the public, especially once people get into dang, my shirt all fucked up. But especially once people get into the rhythm of posting their jokes and posting their memes, they kind of start like just ignoring, like, okay, what are the actual details here? So that's one of the things that I definitely want to talk about. Um, and just see what y'all think. If y'all feel any differently at all once y'all actually start to hear what he's being charged with. So we'll get into all of that in a second. But first, let's see, where is it? Here it is. A quick intro.
Queen bitch, supreme bitch, I'ma stay that bitch.
So, as the intro says, I am the host of Bitches Love Sports, Jazz Monet, and let's go ahead and get into some of the topics. I want to know what I thought was really weird before we get into that. The Pope died last week. Like, I know people have been talking about how there's a shift in people's focus, like, and like in terms of entertainment taking over like actual important news, right? And how everybody seems so much more obsessed with things that are entertaining or things that are lighter. But I remember when the Pope dying was like a super big deal. Like that would just take over the headlines. It would be on every channel. Everybody would be talking about it. But this year, last week, it kind of felt like Pope Francis died, and everybody's like, okay, yeah, sorry for him, but he was old, and the draft is coming up. Like it was just so weird. I'm just like, they don't have a new pope yet, and nobody's talking about it. Which I'm not Catholic, so it doesn't affect me. But I was just like, that is super weird, a super huge cultural shift. What's good, Clement? Clement says, what's good, Queen? A lot of things to cover tonight. I was trying to get an update on the Shannon Sharpe lawsuit tonight before this live. So I'm gonna be honest with you, Clement. A lot of the stuff that I have to share about the case isn't necessarily new, but the details of the lawsuit have not really been exposed. Like people have talked about what he's been accused of, but for me, when I actually started reading the way that things were written in the lawsuit, that's what had me like, oh shit, we might want to take this a little bit more seriously, because I think people are looking at the situation, they're looking at the relationship as, was the relationship okay or was it not okay? And for me, when I read the details, which we're not even going to get into first, we're going to get into them probably like as one of the second to last things. But for me, when I read the details, I was just like, okay, this might not be a black or white thing. This might be a situation where, like, maybe sometimes it was okay, sometimes it wasn't. Sometimes things were consensual, maybe sometimes they weren't. Um, so you'll see what I mean once you see how she described the relationship, because I think we've seen a lot in terms of how he described the relationship. Um, and he's described it as a consensual relationship. He's been saying that he was set up. Um, but there's a lot of wrong to go around. So I gotta change my camera view a little bit. Like I just feel. I don't know if y'all see the same angle that I see, but I don't know. It was bothering me. Whatever. I can't wait till I have producers and shit to do the shit for me. Um, but anyway, so I don't have a TLDR today. So what we're actually gonna get into is a new segment that I'm basically calling WTF.
What the fuck just happened?
Okay. I took those few seconds to get a sip of water. So, just a few WTF questions, nothing that we're going to spend a lot of time on. Number one, uh, what the fuck is up with colleges getting GMs now? Like, I get it, but like Shaq being the new GM of basketball at Sacramento State, it sounds like kind of a big deal. And I'm just like, okay, what is it that they offered him? Because Shaq already has a lot going on. So, what is it that they offered him to make him say, like, yes, out of all the schools that will probably have me as a GM, Sacramento State is the one that I'm going to? Is it because there's a highlight on Sacramento in general? Because of how the Kings are doing. I don't know. But when I saw that announcement, like at first I was just like, okay, GM, somebody's got to handle the NIL, whatever. And then, there was the recent announcement of Steph Curry being the named the assistant GM at his alma mater. I'm like, all right, assistant, maybe he doesn't have that many responsibilities. But Shaq taking on a GM role at a college, this is getting real. I don't know if the NCAA is ever going to catch up, because honestly, and they're going to have to at some point. Like for the NCAA, it's pretty much catch up or dissolve at this point. But I just feel like the longer it takes them to get a grip on these laws and these rules, the more that they're going to have to deal with. It feels like every week there's a new headline. Now there was a win for them that came out. The players who were college players before 2016 that sued for NIL, basically, judges were like, nah, we're capping that at, like, I think they capped it at 2016, and it was the players before 2016 that were suing. I don't remember, but the judges were like, no, we're not awarding y'all anything. So that was a win for them. But as far as moving forward, I feel like things just keep getting further and further out of their control. But anyway, sounds like Shaq is happy for this opportunity, so congrats to him. WTF moment number two. What the fuck is up with Shiloh Sanders firing Deion Sanders as his agent? So, in case y'all didn't see it, the draft ended. Shiloh was not drafted. He ended up being signed to, was it the Buccaneers? These are the things that I should write down in my show notes. Y'all know how I'd be about show notes. So, but Shiloh was signed. He was an undrafted free agent. Ended up being signed to somewhere, but he made an announcement on video. Actually, let me see if I can pull it up for y'all, because I really want y'all to see how this actually happened. But he made an announcement on video saying that he was firing Shiloh Sanders as his agent. And it's one of those things that people might think like, oh, he was joking, but like, no, it was literally announced. Um, the agent, why can I not remember these details? Because it was like a really popular agent. The agent that ended up taking him on actually made a post about it. And they're like, welcome to the family, Shiloh. Hold on. I'm going to take like 10 seconds to see if I can find it. Okay, so it was to the Bucks. I was right about that. And his agent is can't find it. But Shiloh did sign with an agent, so good for him. But also it was just interesting that he like went online and announced it. Okay, I've got the video up. So let me go ahead and play that for you guys because I want y'all to see exactly how it played out. Like, don't just take my word for it. All right, so let me see if we can actually stop it. This is why I hate TikTok.
Too good. So today I had to sign with an agent, bro. So we gonna see what happens.
Okay. I'm gonna refresh this and then we're just gonna keep going.
It hasn't been working out too good. So today I had to sign with an agent, bro. So we gonna see what happens.
Okay, whatever. So essentially, he was on live and he said, Dad was our agent, but that hasn't been working out too good. So today I just signed with an agent. And I was just like, okay, well, that's interesting. So I'm just really curious as to what that means for the Sanders family. I'm just kind of like, all right, does that mean Shadora is eventually going to get his own agent? And then, like, here's a really good question. What does this mean for well off media? Because well off media usually follows a family, but what happens when the family is all in different places? Like, you've got Shiloh in Tampa Bay, you've got Shador in Cleveland. Oh God. Um, I'm saying that about Cleveland, not about Shador. And then you'll have Dion still in Colorado. So what exactly is going to happen there? But if you've been paying attention to Well Off Media, which is basically the content creation company that is run by Deion Sanders Jr., he's still posting content. He was still posting content from the draft, but no word yet on how he plans to move forward. So this will be an interesting moment for the Sanders family and for anyone who follows the Sanders family. Um, WTF moment number 3. What the fuck is up with the Cowboys drafting an offensive lineman instead of a skill player like what everybody expected? So okay, here's the thing. Now, if you are like followed me onto any of the Twitter spaces I was on, you know that I don't necessarily feel like super strongly for or against this, but I was 100% expecting the Cowboys to go with the skill player. Um, like going into the draft, I was in my mind, I was like, all right, so they've done a lot of defensive stuff in free agency, so the draft should be all about the offense, right? And that first pick, I guess it was about the offense in a way, but just not in the way that we expected. Now, since then, a few people have asked me how I feel about it, what I think about it. And y'all know me, I'm not really one for overreacting. So I'm just kind of like, this is another situation where we got to wait and see. And I know everybody wants an answer right now. Everybody wants to know right now what we should expect from Tyler Booker, right? Um, that was another thing that was kind of funny to me. Y'all remember making the band where it was like Dylon, 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 right? And in my mind, I was just like, who's the best O lineman for Dallas? Tyler, or Tyler? Um, just me being silly. But no, when it comes to what to expect from him, a lot of people want to know right now. And I think that's a part of what I call Dallas Cowboys fan anxiety, right? Because we don't really know what to expect from him with the Cowboys. Like, he did great things at Alabama. That was one of the things that actually made me feel really good about it when it first happened, because also, if you've been following me, you know I've been super busy this year. I have not watched a ton of players. And while I had heard this guy's name, I had not watched like a ton of film on him or anything. I've seen a few highlights. I'm like, oh, impressive. Heard about the 0 sack thing. Oh, that's cool. Um, but for me, it was the fact that as an offensive lineman, he was invited to the draft because there were only so many invites that were given out, and he had one of them. And so I'm just like, all right, if he's actually there present at the draft, he must be pretty fucking good. So I was like, okay, cool, that's a win. Um, but as far as what to expect, there's no way to know. But in terms of the trend, right? When we look at how much was done in terms of getting players for the trenches, it's one of those things that makes me wonder, okay, is this pointing to a certain philosophy for the Dallas Cowboys for the 2025 season? Are they trying to double down on this idea of them being a team that can run the ball and stop the run? And by run the ball, I don't mean get a really good running back. Apparently it means get someone who can create holes for an acceptable running back, which is also a strategy. That's a choice. That's a thing that people can do. But will it work? We won't know at this point because this could be something that was well thought out and people like really broke it down like, oh, we think this running back would do really good behind him, or we think having Tyler Smith, Cooper Beebe, and Tyler Booker in the middle can really do some things for this offense in terms of protecting Dak and helping us with the run. It could be something that they really thought out. It could be Clayton Adams just being an O-line guy and focusing on O-line things. And it turns out to be a mistake. We don't know. These are human beings that make these decisions. Um, but here's the other thing. The Cowboys went into this draft with so many holes and so many needs that they could have drafted damn near anybody. They could have drafted anybody except for a fucking kicker and a long snapper, and you could come up with a reason why the team needed them. You can come up with a reason. You can come with a pro and a con for every person in every position. So yeah, I would say everybody except for a kicker, long snapper, and a quarterback. Because even with the quarterback, technically they could have justified it. They could have been like, oh, we're planning for after Dak, da da da. Like, he's gonna be 31, blah blah blah, whatever. But like, yeah, if their justification for it is like we think this guy will help our run game, cool. It's not like they didn't need help on the O line. And yes, they also needed a running back, and they also needed a receiver, and they also needed a cornerback, and they also needed other help on defense. Like, it's whatever. Maybe they really do believe in Miles Sanders. It's like I think I put out this video. It's on TikTok, which if you're not following me there, follow me there. But actually, I think I made it a YouTube short too. But I put out a video where I talked about the fact that Miles Sanders was fucking killing it at Philadelphia. Then he went to Carolina, and all of a sudden, everything just dropped the fuck off. And so it could be that people are out there like, you know what? If we get him behind a good offensive line, he can return to that Philadelphia Eagles production. Like a lot of people are assuming that he just like lost it, that his talent just poof, just fucking disappeared. And then I just be like, no. We just need to get him in a right situation behind the right people. So yeah. Am I super excited about it? Like was he somebody that I'm like, oh my God, I hope the Cowboys get this guy? Nah, it wasn't that. But can I see, some solid justification for it? Absolutely. So I'm not mad at it. I'm not mad at it. And for any other draft takes, y'all will have to wait a while. And before I get to this last WTF moment, I'm gonna look at some of y'all's comments real quick. What's up, Willie? It's good to see you in the chat. Willie says, this isn't good for Shannon at all. Phone pranking is beyond disrespectful and weak. Okay, so addressing two different topics there. The phone prank thing, apparently the NFL is still looking into that. They're saying that Shedeur is not the only player who was pranked that night or over the weekend, but they are tying all the prank calls to, I forget if anybody remembers the guy's name, put it in the chat, but the guy who works for the Falcons. So I guess they're looking into protocols and how to secure information like players' phone numbers. So yeah, interesting situation there. It sounds like there was an apology exchange between Shadur Sanders and the kid, so whatever. Um, Clement says exactly. Well, I'm not a fan of colleges hiring NBA players to be GMs. Um, how many topics are y'all talking about with these comments? NCAA needs to work up and regulate these laws and regulations when it comes to NIL and transfer portal. Drew Rosenhaus, yes, that is Shiloh's agent. Thank you, Clement. I appreciate it. Like, I remember seeing it earlier, and I was just like, it's a well-known dude. Why is the name not coming to me? I'm gonna blame ADHD. When it comes to shit like that, the memory lapses, inability to focus. Like, usually there's some ADHD symptom that I'm like, yep, it's that. But yeah, Drew Rosenhaus, that's who Shiloh's with. And there's another video that I didn't pull up, but like there doesn't seem there doesn't seem to be any issue between Shiloh and Dion. They were on camera together, talking about it, laughing about it. So family business. But yeah, no, the whole thing of like NBA players becoming GMs, on the surface, I don't have a problem with it. It's what happens when lines start to get crossed. Like, who are these NBA players still connected to? What kind of leverage might they have that might make the playing field uneven? But I mean, the playing field's so uneven anyway. That's why I'm just like, congratulations to Shaq. And the NCAA has a lot to handle. I don't know. Willie says, Jess, you know how Jay does things. That's something else I thought about with the draft, Willie, because I was thinking, like, okay, so the same way that I was like, okay, this could be Clayton Adams doing O-line guy things, right? This could also be Jerry just being like, yeah, I don't want to use a high pick on a running back. I don't give a fuck who it is. And the compromise was to get someone who could still help the run game, if not one of the best running backs. So, and I know we're still technically looking for a receiver, but I saw that they got a couple as undrafted free agents. So we'll see how all that plays out. Once again, everybody relax. Let's give these players a chance and see how they do. Because it's like, I think sometimes people get caught up in where, and we'll talk about this when we talk about Shador. People get caught up with where a player was taken, where they drafted, where they UDFA, so on and so forth. But I mean, fact of the matter is, it's like, even if they're UDFA, they're still one of the best athletes in the country, one of the best athletes in the world. So it's like, the further you get down in rankings, the smaller that gap is in terms of talent and ability. So like, those first rounders, they are usually fucking elite. They are the type of people that, like, you ain't never seen no shit like this before. By the time you get to the, I won't say fourth round necessarily, but fifth round and below for sure, the gap from one round to the next, or between like fifth and sixth, between UD and UDFAs, is usually a lot smaller. A lot of times it might even come down to something like just maybe like size. Like, a lot of guys that are undersized, like maybe they're shorter or lighter weight, end up being UDFAs, or just experience. So like, maybe they looked good in their conference, but it wasn't exactly the SEC. It wasn't exactly the Big 12. You know what I'm saying? So they're just still, it's more so question marks as opposed to cons that cancel out their pros. You know what I'm saying? So we'll see what they do. Trick said, I almost started drinking when they skipped out on Golden. That's kind of my point when I talk about human beings making these decisions, because, I was kind of in that place too. And then you got people like on their draft broadcast talking about, well, Golden is too much like CD. And I'm just like, is that bad of a thing? Like, if somebody was like, we can clone CD Lamb and have another one, would anybody be like, oh, that's terrible? So I'm just like, what exactly is the problem? Why are y'all making that sound like that's such a huge drawback? It means we shouldn't take this guy. But once again, it's human beings making these decisions. The decisions may not be based on the most perfect logic ever. there also may be factors considered that we know nothing about. Chick said, "Can't wait for to cook us in the playoffs." Don't say that. Don't say that. We'll figure it out. Clement says, when Stephen Jones is running the NFL draft with Will McClay, the final decision maker, Jerry Jones is still stuck in his ways back in the 90s when we had Nate Newton, Eric Williams, Mark Stepnoski. Okay. JV, what's up? You made it to I'm sorry. I did not mean to sound dismissive of that comment, Clement. I just can't remember what that would have been referring to. Good to see you made it to a broadcast. Clement, I think, is continuing. Larry Allen, that led the way for Emmitt Smith in the running game and protect Troy Aikman in the passing game. We definitely didn't address the positions of need, which is running back, wide receiver, and defensive tackle. We didn't address them the way a lot of people wanted to. I mean, think about the list that you just made. Running back, wide receiver, defensive tackle, all listed as positions of need. You can't address all of those in the first round. There was no way that they were going to adequately address every position of need satisfactory for every fan. Somebody was going to be pissed about something. There are some people who are very glad about the Tyler Booker pick. And there are some people who are very upset, like our friend Trix here, that they passed up on Golden. There are some people who wanted them to get whatever the best running back was that was available. Like, that's why I said they went into this draft with so many holes. You could come up with a reason for it or against damn near anybody in any position. And I think that statement is a prime example of that, Clement. And a modern elder helping me out with the name of the Atlanta. I cannot talk, y'all. Atlanta Falcons guy whose tablet was compromised. According to reports, his son, unbeknownst to him, just got information off his tablet, and Deion Sanders' number was one of those pieces of information. So Jeff Ulbrich is now being investigated. Amari Cooper's name was rumored today, according to Clement. His departure was so messy. I just could not imagine that happening. But there are some different people in the building now. So maybe they're making different choices. Maybe there are people who feel a different way. Maybe the Cowboys are just that damn desperate to where whatever happened, they're just like, you know what? Water under the bridge, bury the hatchet. We need receiver help. We passed on Ashton Jeanty, Amarion Hampton, Trevon Henderson, RJ Harvey. Was Ashton Jeanty still on the board when the Cowboys picked? Was he? I'm gonna be honest. First night of the draft, I was enjoying some very good food and drinking. I might not be remembering things correctly, so you could 100% be correct. Trink said we never had a chance at JT for real. I didn't think we did either. PFF gave Dallas an A+ for the draft. Dang. That just goes to show how much variance there is between opinions, because I have heard people who are pissed, and apparently there are some people who looked at it and was like, you know what, the Cowboys did a phenomenal job. Phenomenal. Me, just me. I don't recognize the name, so welcome to the show. Me, just me says we passed on some good ones, but the trenches are necessary if you want success. Agreed. I've talked about that before. When it comes to football still being very much a combat sport, a contact sport, the trenches is where it happens. They are physically engaged with trying to dominate one another more than any other position on the field. Can't touch quarterbacks. You can't touch receivers. You can't even touch running backs too hard. But in the trenches, that's where the real fighting happens, you know. Our team lacks toughness. I used to argue that point, but like just what we've seen, especially late in the season and postseason, it does seem to be the case. Not so much talent. I think we used wisdom at the draft this year. So another person is very happy with the choices. I'm not mad at it. Clement says that is why you use free agency to address those needs by bringing in a veteran player, i.e. Keenan Allen, who could be wide receiver too. I have no argument there for you, Clement. Like, trying to make sense of every single decision the Cowboys make is above my pay grade. Literally. Like, not only do I not work for them, I don't even get paid for this. Like, am I monetized? Yes. Do I get enough views and traffic to actually make any real money off of it? No. So I will assess to a point, and then once it starts to make my head hurt, I'm just like, all right, that's what they did. When does the season start? Can't wait to see how this plays out. Anyway, so Clement gives the team a C in the draft. Willie gives the team a B. Because I value the trenches, I'm gonna go with Willie and give them a B. I wish we would have come out of the draft with some excitement in terms of offensive skill players. But I'm going to trust that they have some sort of strategy, some sort of scheme in mind that will make their focus on the trenches make sense. And I'm just going to watch, I'm going to observe, I'll report back to y'all and go from there. They said that corner we drafted is actually top 5 at his position, but coming off a bad injury. I heard that as well. Another one of those wait and see things. Like, there's a few players already on the Cowboys roster that we have to wait and see. So anyway, after that long conversation about the draft choices, that brings me to the final / bonus what the fuck moment of our what the fuck segment, going into our main segment, which is what the fuck is up with Shiloh Sanders sliding all the way back to the 5th round. Now, one of the other things that I was trying to pull up for you guys before this broadcast started was a clip from this morning's episode of Get Up. Get Up is one of the few shows on ESPN I still watch. I'm back and forth on First Take. I enjoy watching Get Up. Greeny actually majored in journalism or broadcasting, one of them, and I think that shows in the show. And then NFL Live and NBA Today always have like some really good updates. Did I say Shiloh, Clement? My bad. But yeah, no, what the fuck is up with Shedeur sliding back all the way back to the 5th round? So when it was playing out and he like kind of slid past where people expected, I think the lowest prediction before the draft started was him going like number 21 to the Steelers. And everybody's like, all right, if he's not gone before then, that's where he's gonna go. And then that didn't happen, and people were just kind of like, huh? And so when he didn't get drafted in the 1st round at all, that's when the speculation really started coming out. So we heard some people say, oh, he's just not that good, which is debatable. It's really hard to say how good he really is because for most of his college career, his O-line was atrocious. And I know a lot of college quarterbacks deal with not great offensive lines, but his was so bad. Like, if you've never just really watched a bulk of the Colorado games consecutively just to see how quickly the pocket would collapse, like how many times he got sacked hard. I can understand him hesitating. I can understand him holding on to the ball. But that was one of the reasons why I would always say Shedeur needed development. Like, he's good, but he needed development because I kind of looked at it as a situation where he developed some bad habits because of the things he had to do in response to having such a bad offensive line. He got used to holding on to the ball so long. He got used to being nervous. He got used to hesitation. He got used to not having protection and not really being able to be calm inside of the pocket. So I still feel like he did some impressive things. Was he as athletic as a Caleb Williams, for example? No. But did he make some phenomenal throws? Was he able to throw the ball across his body on the run, get out the pocket, scramble, make plays, even though he had almost no protection a lot of the time? Like, yeah, he was getting it done. And so there are some people who are like, well, you can't really factor that in because most college quarterbacks don't have a good O-line. So he still doesn't look good compared to them. And I'm just like, nah. Most college quarterbacks don't have a very good O-line, the same way that most college quarterbacks don't face defenses nearly on the level of what they'll see in the pros. There's just something about the trenches specifically that when you get to the NFL, it's on a whole nother level. But what Shedeur was dealing with was some of the worst shit I've ever seen a college quarterback have to deal with. And that's just being honest. That's something that I always thought even before the draft happened. I was just like, yo, this is beyond bad. He's going to get himself hurt. You can go back and look at my Twitter. There are tweets that I posted where I talked about how Deion Sanders was being negligent as both a coach and a father for having Shador out there behind that offensive line. I was like, they got to do better. He is not going to last this way. Nobody is that fucking durable. So there was that argument. He's not actually that good. Then there were these people really got on my nerves. If you follow me on Twitter, you know this. There were the people who were saying that he needed to be humbled. And here's one of the things that bothered me about that. There were some anonymous reports that came out about Shador that just made him sound like the most entitled, bratty motherfucker you'd ever want to come across, right? But it was always anonymous. Anybody who put their name on it, their feedback was always either positive or moderate. It was never nearly as bad or egregious as these anonymous reports. And I'm like, if he was this bad so often, why won't these people put their name on their statements? Because clearly he's doing this to so many people. Somebody would back you up. Somebody would be able to say, oh, this person is not just a hater saying this. I saw it. Or he came to our club and he did the same thing. Or, just something along those lines. Like, if that's really what he was out here doing, just being way too cocky, just demanding way too much, being almost disrespectful to the culture of a place, it just seems like multiple people would have been able to say, like, yeah, we observed that, and that's why he's not being drafted. But the whole time that he signed down in the draft, none of these people are putting their name on their statements. None of these people are saying, like, this whole department actually witnessed yada yada yada. It's all anonymous. Super fucking weird to me. And so that's why I wanted to play the clip this morning, because Woody was on Get Up and he was essentially presenting a new angle on it, where apparently some NFL franchises were saying that the Sanders were not getting complete information, that there were people who had bad evaluations of Shador, but did not want to say it publicly or out loud because they didn't want to deal with possible backlash from Deion Sanders, the Sanders family, the publicity that came with it. I don't know. Now, there are some people who had to take that was somewhat in between. There are some people who are like just me in the chat here, who said that he slid in rounds because of ratings, because the NFL wanted more people to keep watching more days of the draft, which, if you look at the ratings of the draft, they were like breaking records in terms of draft viewership. So I could kind of see that argument. It serves a reason. And then there were some people who were like, yeah, with him not having an agent and doing everything pretty much by himself or with his father, he really wasn't getting complete information, not only about his attitude, but also about his ability. And there are basically people arguing that he should have handled the pre-draft process differently. He should have played in the Shrine Bowl. He should have actually done drills in the combine, that had he done those things, it might have affected where he got drafted or his perceived value. And that's not outside the realm of possibility, especially if there are as many people as I've observed who are kind of on the fence about his ability and wondering, is it him or is it the O-line? And they wanted to see, okay, what is his speed like? What is his passing ability like? What is his athleticism, his decision-making really like when he's either doing drill solo or he's behind other people, so on and so forth, right? I can see that. But I feel like most of those arguments, whether you feel like he should have handled the pre-draft process differently in terms of what he did at the combine, or if you feel like he didn't present himself well in interviews, because if I'm not mistaken, he actually put out a statement himself saying that he could have handled the pre-draft process differently or better in terms of how he interacted with certain clubs, right? And so at the end of the day, my thing is this. Who among us has not had a situation where we've made a bad impression, where we've botched an interview, or done a job poorly, or even just social situations. You went on a date and you did something on the date that you really regret or that was really embarrassing. I feel like even if it is that he was too cocky, too arrogant, didn't handle the interviews right, should have done the combine, blah, blah, blah. Even if those things are the case, those are all things that are typical of the human experience, are they not? The difference with Shador is that the spotlight is on him. We get to see his mistakes. We get to hear people talk about his mistakes. He doesn't get to just like keep that private and be like, whew, I won't make that mistake again. Like, he's going to be reminded of this for a long time. Now, the good thing about this situation for him is if this is something where some of these reports are accurate and he really did say that he felt like he should have handled some of these things differently, he's young. He can learn from this. He's in a position now. If you were watching from the beginning, when I said Cleveland Browns, I was like, oh God. And it was because when they picked him, literally what I was thinking was, I was like, it would be so nice if fans of Shedeur Sanders could now say something like, "Oh, see, he got picked by the Cleveland Browns. His character couldn't be that bad because they picked him." But it's like, unfortunately, the Browns have lost all credibility when it comes to character assessment. It's like, y'all thought he was too arrogant to pick him in the first round. Like, that's where y'all draw the line. Okay, cool. But yeah, so putting the history of the Browns and their bad decisions in terms of both character assessment and just business decisions to the side, he has an opportunity to go into an organization and truly compete. Because like, who do they have that's really gonna like who do they have that's like a certain for sure starter? Like, they got what like Flacco, they got Pickett, like, these are people that, at least on paper, he can compete with. So he has an opportunity to go to an organization, truly compete with four other quarterbacks, and prove that he deserves to be a starter. He has an opportunity to prove people wrong and do something, dare I use the word, legendary. Not just a brand, it could be his story. So this actually could end up turning out really good for him. This could be the beginning of a story. So we may never get the full answers about what happened with Shador. We may never get the full story. We may never have people put their names on these anonymous reports, right? But moving forward, for anybody who really did and does support Shador Sanders, there's an opportunity to really watch how this plays out and see what he can do and give him a chance to show that he's learned from this and to actually show that he is who he says he is in terms of being a leader and a starting quarterback. So that's why I am with it. I love weed says, hit the love button for Miss Jazz. Yes, please. Please like this video. I'd appreciate that. If you are watching on Twitter, just come over to the YouTube side just for a second. Hit the like button, drop something in the chat. Subscribe if you have not. Turn those notifications on if you have not. Por favor. Thank you so much. Let's see what else y'all got to say. Clement says, for me, I applaud Deion controlling the narrative and wanting his son to play on a good team with good weather. Fair. Also reported that Shador didn't interview well, arrogant attitude, and didn't do the NFL Combine besides the Colorado Pro Day in Boulder. For me, Shador hasn't been in any trouble off the field. Facts. They talk about him like he's a bad kid when he might just have a bad attitude, which is not that bad. Led to programs, bowl games, set numerous records. I don't think he is entitled to... I thought you were going to continue after that. But yeah, if you just meant to say you don't think he's entitled, okay, fair. Sorry for taking over the chat. At least you make good points, Clement. I don't mind you posting a lot because you actually say constructive things and add to the conversation. So yeah, like, post all you want. It's when people come in here with like bullshit that I'm just like, all right, you need to shut the fuck up. But nah, you're good, Clement. You're good. And then Chris said, hi, Chris. Thanks for joining us tonight. Chris said, I think a lot of organizations was turned off by the process leading up to the draft. That does seem to be the narrative at this point now that the draft is over. Not testing, not playing in bowl games, not taking interviews seriously, etc., bigger than the program. I even heard one report, and this was something I could actually believe just because it kind of aligned with stuff that I've heard him say, like in other interviews and press conferences and stuff. But I did hear a report that said he said something like he went into an interview talking about how he was going to be a leader and he was going to change the culture. Um, which would have been an acceptable message if he were for sure a starter. But when a team is trying to decide if you're going to be a backup or how they feel about some of your question marks, and you walking there talking about you're going to change the culture, it might actually be a turnoff to the decision makers and the coaches and so on and so forth. And they don't want to deal with someone who's walking in already trying to change things. And that was one of the reports that I heard. And I was like, you know what? Fair. I could see him saying that. And I could see an organization being like, I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know if that's something that we really want. So it could have been just like a lot of assumptions on his part about what his job would be, because like he really comes off as a guy who wants to be a good leader. He comes off as a guy who wants to inspire his teammates, motivate them, um, and even if he was talking to a team who could use a culture change, right? That doesn't mean that they necessarily want to hear that as one of the first things that they hear from a guy that they're still trying to decide on, you know? So it's like timing matters. Timing matters. Timing matters. Verbiage matters. Presentation matters. All these things can make a difference. Let's see what else we got. Splenda P. Vela, what's up? Thank you for joining us. I love Weed said Joe Flacco will be his mentor. Oh my God. And Chris wants to be a mod. Chris, I don't remember how to make people a mod. When I made JV a mod, I had to like literally stop and Google the instructions. So one day, maybe. All right. So on that note, let's talk about the Shannon Sharpe situation. Now that we're 45 minutes into the show, which the Shannon Sharpe situation could technically be another WTF situation. So for those of you who are not up to speed, there was a lawsuit filed against Shannon Sharpe. The lawsuit accuses him of, I'm not going to monetize this video, so I can just talk freely. Like I said, I don't make that much off monetization anyway. So we're just going to talk freely about this situation. So if you are watching this, just know I'm about to talk about and read the details of a lawsuit that contains some language that might be triggering for certain people who have been victims of SA or just sensitive to those related topics. So this is your opportunity to either turn this off, fast forward if you're watching the playback, whatever you got to do. But we're about to talk about it. So a lawsuit was filed against Shannon Sharpe that accused him of various types of abuse and assault, as well as rape. And so the lawsuit was actually filed by a Jane Doe. So when I pull up the court documents in a second, you'll see that it says Jane Doe. But it came out later that this was actually a young woman who, I forget her name. Y'all have been doing a good job of putting stuff in the chat. So help me out. No show notes tonight. A lot of this is just coming off memory. But it came out that the person who filed the lawsuit and accused Shannon Sharpe of these things was actually a young woman who is an OnlyFans model worker. I don't know what we're calling them now, but OnlyFans was a solid source of revenue for them. And so Shannon Sharpe, when he was defending himself to the public, said that this was a consensual relationship. And even in the lawsuit, it describes a 2-year relationship. So a lot of the criticism right now is kind of like, there are some people who believe the accusations, and those are the people who like, no, I can't support someone who do things like that. Fuck Shannon Sharpe. I'm done. There are some people who believe that it is or was a consensual relationship, but they're also like, okay, how did you get caught up with, at the time that they became involved with one another, she was 19 and Shannon Sharpe would have been 54. So they're like, how do you as a grown ass man. Some people would call an old man. He's referred to as unk, right? Um, so how did you, at your grown ass age, having so much experience in the world of having fame and status and notoriety and money, get caught up by 19-year-old pussy, basically? Um, and that's where people are criticizing him, because they're like, how did you fall for this? How did you end up in a situation where, uh, basically, based on what Shannon Sharpe is saying, it sounds like he would sometimes engage in acts of consensual non-consent with this young woman. And they're like, how did you do something like that? Allow her to record it. You didn't keep a copy of yourself, and now you're in all this trouble. And so I'm not here to kink shame. I know there are a lot of people who have issues with the whole idea of CNC anyway. Like, they believe that CNC is just a way for people who are actually grapists, as one of my favorite content creators referred to it. But there are some people who believe that people who are actually grapists will use CNC as a way to play out their fantasies, and that it's still not healthy, regardless. Um, so once again, I'm a sex positive person. I'm not here to kink shame. So I have no thoughts on that, except that filming it is not smart for that reason. Now, if you've listened to some of my other types of content or had other types of conversations with me, you know how I feel about filming in general. I feel like it's smart. So I feel like, and this is just a little bit of a tangent, just so y'all know where I stand with this young woman. Um, I feel like sex work is work. So I have no problem. Chris, CNC stands for consensual non consent. It's basically a type of sex or a type of sex content where there's simulated acts of violation of consent or rape or grape, as I might use more so in this video, because I really don't know where the line is with YouTube. I'm okay with this not being monetized, but I don't want them to completely take it down. And so I'm not really clear on what words I can use or how much. So my bad if I go back and forth. Um, but yeah, CNC, consensual non-consent, da da da. Oh, Clement posted an NBA playoff update. I'm actually watching the Rockets game is up here. This is actually a close game. But yeah, keep posting updates, Clement. I appreciate you. But yeah, so I feel like sex work is work. So if that's how she's making her money, I'm like, do your thing. So when it comes to the age gap and the possible exchange of funds, I'm like, sugar daddies have been a thing for the longest. Sex work has been a thing for the longest. Some people even refer to it as one of the world's oldest professions, right? And when it comes to filming, and this is the thing that I would always tell people, I'm just like, so in a lot of places, exchanging money for sex is illegal, right? But if you pay someone to make content, that is legal. So, in other words, you can get out of a lot of trouble by being like, well, I wasn't paying for sex, I was paying for them to let me film it, right? Because making porn and paying someone for their services as an actress or a model is legal, but paying for sex is not. So weird shit there. But anyway, that's pretty much where I fall on that line. I don't have a problem with her having that profession, right? But things get complicated now when it's like, okay, was this consensual or was it not? And what exactly happened there? So, like I said earlier, I wanted to dive into the details of this lawsuit because, like other lawsuits that I've covered on this program, I feel like some of the details that are in the lawsuit are not exposed in the public. In this case, for very good reason. Um, but people get caught up in the jokes and the memes, and they lose sight of like what a person is actually being accused of. And so I'm just like, all right, if we're gonna talk about this anyway, like with everything that we discuss, I feel like we should discuss it from an educated perspective. And before I pull up the text, Clement says, Shannon should have known better that he was being filmed and that she was using you to get fame to build up her OnlyFans content. Monique told him on his podcast that he needs to find a woman his age. Um, so yeah, I think I was under the impression that he did know that he was being filmed. And so I'm like, it's stupid of you to not get your own copy. Like, what are we doing here? Um, so so yeah, I was under the impression that he did know. But either way, I don't even think is she really trying to build up her OnlyFans content? Like, is that the goal, or is she just trying to get a bag so she can get out that game altogether? Give me 1 second to get another sip of water. I swear, every time I go live this time of night, like, just my whole nasal passage just dries up. Give me 1 second, I'll come back, we'll pull up the lawsuit, and we'll go from there. Okay. I got to figure out what it is, because I swear I'll start off and I'll be straight, and then next thing you know, I'm just like, ugh. It's like, it's not even just dry, it's like almost congested, kind of. Anyway, let me pull up this. Let me pull up, get this screen going. Let me see how this looks. It's loading. And let's just expand that a little bit. So, spoiler alert, I don't know how many documents from this case I'm actually going to be able to get for y'all. Because, like, in the past, I've kept up with cases, right? Like, we'll start off with the lawsuit, and then I'll show y'all other documents as their developments. I'm not going to go into how I got this one. I'm going to just say it's been really difficult for me to find on my own where to get these documents. And I don't know if I'll be able to depend on this source in the future. Um, and so, yeah, enjoy this, because this might be the only actual document from this case that we get. But just so you know, so far, nothing else has happened. This has been filed. There haven't been any proceedings scheduled or anything like that. And yeah, there are addresses and phone numbers on here. Whatever. I didn't even take the time to like redact certain things or anything like that. All right. So we've got the intro where they're basically talking about what consent is what they start off with. And then it goes into describing how they met. And if you follow me on Twitter, one of the things I said was that this case left me with a lot of questions. And honestly, from the very beginning is where the questions started for me. So it says, this is still the intro. It says, defendant Shannon Sharpe is a 56-year-old former NFL superstar. He claims to be one of the most successful sports media personalities in the country. The plaintiff is a young woman in her early 20s, and in 2023, the plaintiff was working out at a gym in Los Angeles, California, when Sharpe approached her for the first time. Previously, Doe had noticed Sharpe watching her during her workouts. At this time, Doe was just 19 years old. At the time, she did not know who he was, only that he was another older man ogling her at the gym. Doe could tell Sharpe was much older than her. She found him physically intimidating. Eventually, he introduced himself. At his determined insistence, she gave him her number. So, honestly, my first question isn't a very good one. I suppose it's possible that a person didn't know who Shannon Sharpe was, but I guess the thing is, for me, I'm just like, Shannon was successful in 2023 as well. So it's hard for me to believe that he was just going to like a regular ass box gym. So in my mind, I'm like, this is probably the type of gym where, there were other just like clientele of a certain status. So even if you didn't know who he was, you might have known that he was someone with status or with some level of fame or even a certain income. Like, even here in Texas, there are certain gyms where somebody says, yeah, I'm a member at Equinox, or Equinox, however you pronounce it. They're like, yeah, I'm a member at Equinox. I kind of already have an idea of where they probably are in life if they're a member at Equinox. You know what I'm saying? So just little things like that I was just thinking about. Anyway, so she noticed him, found him intimidating, but he kept pushing. She gave him her number. Over the next couple of weeks, Sharp incessantly pursued the plaintiff. He constantly approached her at the gym and attempted to contact her frequently with phone calls and text messages asking to meet up, unwilling to take no for an answer. Eventually, the plaintiff gave in and agreed to meet with Sharp outside of the gym. However, before doing so, Sharp demanded that Doe sign a non disclosure agreement or NDA, something plaintiff found a bit concerning. She wondered why Sharp was so insistent on her signing an NDA. She refused. Despite his repeated efforts to get her to sign, she refused time and time again. Eventually, he dropped the issue and invited her to his house. That was his first mistake. Um, I don't know like what the typical standards are for having someone sign an NDA, but and this is for anything. This is not just for sex. This is for business or whatever. If you are in a situation, let's say it's a business situation, because sometimes people have business ideas that they want to discuss, and they're like, I gotta make sure this person signs an NDA. I don't want them to take my idea and go share it. Don't renege on that. That's there for a reason. It's there to protect you. Why would you take something that's meant to protect you and just be like, you know what? I'm gonna take a chance. I'm gonna get rid of it. Not smart. This is not smart on his part. Um, what followed was the beginning of a rocky consensual relationship that lasted nearly 2 years. The relationship was very unequal. Sharp is more than 30 years older, is considerably wealthier, is physically much larger, and exponentially stronger. Sharp is famous and has power. So that's another place where my question started, because I was really curious. And once again, I'm not saying any of this to discredit the plaintiff. Pretty much any case I've ever read, I've had questions. That's the whole reason why this goes before a judge, is so that they can say, hey, we need more evidence. We need to do discovery, whatever. So questions are normal. I'm not saying that this means that what they're saying isn't true. I'm just pointing out that there are some things that, at minimum, there are some more things that are going to have to come out before this is all said and done. So, but my question at this point was like, okay, how did the relationship start? Because so far she hasn't described Shannon Sharpe as being romantic or sweet or them getting along. So far in this lawsuit, in this document, he's been described as intimidating, incessant. There have been some concerning actions described. Some just like, how do you go from being intimidated, and concerned, like not so sure about a situation, to being like, oh yeah, we're in a relationship. Like, what happened there? Um, and I assume it has something to do with whatever influenced her to go to his house. But those are the types of things that, more details are going to have to come out about in order for there to be, I feel like, an adequate judgment on this, because I'm just like I said, he's not described as a good person, but the plaintiff went to his house. Plaintiff got into a relationship with him. So did he say something? Were there some threatening text messages exchanged? It could be anything. What happened? So next, plaintiff and Sharp saw each other on his terms and on his schedule as often as 4 times a week. Now, let me pause here, because this kind of, in my opinion, ties into some of the text messages that were released. And it was hard for me to find an actual copy of the text messages. A lot of the publications that talked about the text messages coming out said that his lawyer released a 44-page document of text messages, but most of these outlets, TMZ and whoever else, only mentioned a few of them. But a lot of them had to do with an exchange of money. So there was one that was going around a lot that people started making jokes about, where he said something about like her ass or something, and she was like, 25,000 for each cheek. And so I'm just like, okay, if that's what it was, then that's something that, in my opinion, you don't want to leave out. Because if you leave that out and it comes out later that this wasn't some consensual relationship between, two people who were trying to figure out power dynamics, and it was actually a financial exchange, okay, then we have to also address the other motives or the other possible motives of the plaintiff. And we also have to consider what Shannon Sharpe's perception of the situation might have been if he's looking at it as like, I pay for her attention, I pay for sexual gratification, I pay for her to be, as a lawsuit says, um, here on my terms, on my schedule, as often as 4 times a week. That does sound like a job. Um, so what happened? Then it says over time, the plaintiff began to see Sharpe's true nature. Once again, I want to know what she saw before, because what's being described in the lawsuit doesn't describe him as anything good, which it's very possible that she saw him as a good guy. He was flirty, he was sweet. And now that the lawsuit is coming out in hindsight, she's like, you know what? That was kind of creepy. That situation really wasn't okay. But just at the time, I was blinded by his charm or whatever. That is something that is actually very common when it comes to things that victims experience, where it's like they get caught up in characteristics. Next thing you know, they're in a bad situation. And then in hindsight, they're like, you know what? I should have seen those red flags. But it's one of those things that, like, okay, in order for the correct context to be applied here, those are details that might be valuable. Like, if this is a time where you're seeing his true nature, quote unquote, what were you seeing before? What was he doing before? The lawsuit says she found him to be dishonest about his whereabouts. He would lie about seeing other women while insisting to her that she and he were exclusive. He often manipulated her, at times being sweet and loving to get what he wanted. So there's that. And at other times being angry and aggressive to achieve his goals, which, if you are Shannon Sharpe's age, for example, because I know a lot of my audience is like 30s and up, you might read that and be like, okay, well, that should have been obvious that this wasn't what she thought it was. But go back into your mind when you were like 19 years old, and how you thought about relationships and how easy it might have been for someone to like pull you back in by being like, oh, well, I was mad yesterday, but like, here's a gift, or, oh, I love you today, that kind of thing. She discovered over time that Sharpe was extremely emotional and possessed an uncontrollable temper. He displayed the characteristics of a true narcissist. He wielded his power, his influence, and his celebrity to control the plaintiff and get exactly what he wanted whenever he wanted it, all the while jealously guarding what he considered his for himself. By October 2024, Sharpe's behavior had grown progressively worse beyond anything the plaintiff had experienced with him before. At this point, he was insistent upon recording their sexual activities. So this is why I said that he knew he was being recorded. Because according to this, after October of 2024, he was asking for things to be recorded. Should I pull up this game? 40 seconds left. Should we take a break from this and pull up this game? I don't know what happens if I pull it up. Actually, no. I just thought about it. I don't want them to shut down the stream. Like I said, I'm okay with not being monetized. I don't want them to shut it down. But if they do interviews afterwards, I'll pull up the interviews. Let's see. So he was insistent upon recording their sexual activities, sometimes without her knowledge. Sharpe was also sharing the videos with others without her permission or knowledge, which is really fucked up. Sharpe would repeatedly tell Doe that he wanted to do to her things that would, quote, make no other man want her. By this point, Sharpe was no longer able to credibly maintain that the relationship was exclusive. He had at this point, quote unquote, accidentally or purposely to advance his career, gone live on Instagram while having sex with another woman. Sharpe flew into fits of anger when plaintiff noted his infidelity to their relationship or called him out about his extraneous activities. What had once been manipulation, control, and intimidation now became something far more dangerous and sinister. Sharpe even figured out how to get into Doe's apartment complex without her permission. Sharpe made it clear that what Doe wanted was of no moment, that Sharpe would get what he wanted when he wanted it. And in October 2024, Shannon Sharpe violently sexually assaulted and anally raped the plaintiff 2 different times in Las Vegas, Nevada, blatantly ignoring her request for him to stop. He did it again in January. So that was just the introduction. If we take all that and put it together, basically what the plaintiff is saying, and I'm assuming that that one sentence, I'm going to assume that that applies to their early meetings. Sounds like what the plaintiff was saying was that she maybe got a bad vibe, but he started being really sweet and really loving to convince her to give him her number, go to his house. But then after that, things became manipulative. She was lied to. And then when she confronted him about it, he became violent and angry and committed sexual assault. So from there, we'll scroll through a little bit. We've got the parties, jurisdiction, venue, blah, blah, blah. The factual allegations, that's where they talk about who he is and basically just like really drive in that claim about him having fame and notoriety and being able to will power. That's all this section is. And some of it is repeats of what was in the introduction. All right, this is still what they're presenting as facts. I'll go over the bullet points. So the factual information that they're presenting starts off with who Shannon Sharpe is. Section B, January 2023, the beginning of a consensual but deeply manipulative relationship, which that was talked about in the introduction. Section C, revealed from the start, the violent, aggressive, and controlling nature of Shannon Sharpe. So this is where they actually get a little specific. So right before this, actually, let's go ahead and start with Section B. So Sharpe first met the plaintiff at Los Angeles Gym in early 2023. He would deliberately watch the plaintiff. One day, as the plaintiff finished a set and turned around, she found Sharpe standing inches behind her. Sharpe told her that he had noticed her at the gym and wondered why she had not introduced herself, and this was the first time that they spoke. The plaintiff, who at the time had just turned 20 years old, was caught off guard and was face to face with a 54-year-old man she had never met. So someone had asked if she's in her early 20s. Yes. Right now she'd be like 21, going on 22, or maybe already 22. So then he suggested this contest to see who could lean out faster, and the prize, if the plaintiff won, was that he would buy her fake tits. So already right there, he's starting off with like financial monetary rewards in exchange for her attention. The plaintiff was stunned. The implication that she needed or wanted such a thing was wildly inappropriate. And that's something else that isn't clear here. Like, when did the whole OnlyFans thing actually start? Because I'm like, if she was already on OnlyFans, that's a business investment. But if she wasn't, okay, when did you get on OnlyFans if there's complaints about him being, non-exclusive or cheating, but if you were on OnlyFans, I don't know. Maybe it'll all be sorted out later. Fast forward, he basically kept making himself like present to her, known to her, so on and so forth. And then it talks about her not signing the NDA, and then he dropped the issue. And then it gets into his violent and controlling nature. It says the first night the plaintiff went to Sharpe's house, the experience was unlike anything she had dealt with before, disturbing, unsettling, and given his subsequent conduct, very illuminating. So that actually does give us a little bit more insight into what the plaintiff was dealing with, in the sense that if this was something, because once again, 20 years old, she had never dealt with before, maybe it wasn't in her mind that a man would even act like this. Who knows? When the plaintiff arrived at his house, Sharpe opened the door to his Beverly Glen mansion without a word, no greeting, no acknowledgement, no small talk. Without so much as looking at the plaintiff, he simply turned away from her after opening the door and walked upstairs. The plaintiff hesitated but followed, as she did not know what else to do or where else to go. When they reached the bedroom, Sharpe pointed to the bed before disappearing into the bathroom and shutting the door behind him. He still had not said a word. Now remember, these are all allegations. None of this has been proven. This is just what he's being accused of. Plaintiff sat on the bed, waiting, unsure of what to expect or if she should leave. Roughly 5 minutes later, he finally emerged, but still he said nothing. Instead, that was a crazy ending. Sorry. The Warriors just beat the Rockets 109-106, and the Warriors now lead the series 2-1. My bad. Then, without warning, plaintiff was uncomfortable and unsure of what to do, laid down as well. For roughly 10 minutes, there was nothing but silence. Then, without warning, Sharp placed his hands on the plaintiff's neck from behind, pressed his erect penis against her body, and said his first words of the night: "I knew from the first time I saw you that I was gonna fuck you." Doe and Sharp then engaged in oral sex. As they did so, Doe at some point realized Sharp was using his phone. He was apparently recording her. Plaintiff could see that he was trying to be discreet, but it was obvious what he was doing. She said nothing, scared to confront him for what he might do or say. When it ended, he rolled over and went to sleep. At some point later during the night, Sharp woke up, grabbed Plaintiff by her vagina, and began having sex with her. The next morning, Sharp woke at roughly 4 a.m. to shoot a media segment for sports television. He woke Plaintiff as well and told her she needed to leave, but he informed her that she had to be back by 9 p.m. exactly. The following night, the plaintiff arrived at Sharp's house at approximately 9:05 p.m., just 5 minutes past the time he had demanded. The moment he opened the door, plaintiff experienced his rage for the first time. Sharp immediately launched into a verbal assault. He screamed at the plaintiff, berating her for what felt like hours. He accused her of disrespecting him, wasting his time, and warned that if she wanted to be with the Shannon Sharpe, or I should, hold on, let me say it right. He accused her of disrespecting him, wasting his time, and warned her that if she wanted to be with the Shannon Sharpe, she would have to learn obedience. The plaintiff was terrified and feared for her physical safety. Still enraged, Sharp turned off the lights, grabbed her neck, and just like the night before, began having sexual intercourse with her. This cycle of control, fear, and submission became routine. Yelling at her, controlling her, forcibly grabbing her by the neck when he got upset, saying he was going to kill her, and asserting dominance became the norm. Now, before I keep going, I'm going to read some of the comments just in case any of y'all have changed y'all's mind about wanting to hear this. But something else that's worth noting is the fact that this is one of those things where if you read the text messages that came out, where he's talking about sending her tens of thousands of dollars, you kind of have to wonder, okay, where does that come in? Because those things are not mentioned in the lawsuit. And so when they talk about control and submission, are we talking about financial and that the money was being accepted in exchange for what he perceived to be a service? Or are we talking about this emotional abuse and the money was presented as sort of an apology? You know what I'm saying? I love weed. Thank you so much for the super chat. Much appreciated. Says go Cowboys. I'll take it. And yes, I do accept super chats if anybody wants to throw something up there. Chris Johnson says, this sounds like a Shades of Grey book or something. Damn, it gets worse, sir. Clement says, don't apologize, Jazz. It was necessary, need a necessary break from reading the transcript of this case. You should have seen me the first time I read it. Like, I have never just had to like walk away from my laptop. Normally I read it and it's just like, ugh, this is fucked up. And I just like keep scrolling. This was one where I was just like, oh my God. Clement says, this sounds like a Netflix series, Orange is Black. I don't know that one. I haven't seen that one. And the rest, I think, was y'all talking about the Warriors game. I love y'all so much. I was telling somebody like over the weekend and today, because like I've had a lot of talks about just like the future of this podcast, which I'll get to later. And I was just like, my audience is small, but I love my audience. My audience is dope. And I think this is why, because like y'all are like me. Y'all can like listen to the details of the Shannon Sharpe case, but also enjoy the Warriors game at the same time. And it's like not an issue. Y'all are the dopest. All right, we're going to get back into this. So in section D, this is summer 2024. So now we're talking less than a year ago. And so this is where they say the control turned abusive, which I'm going to be real with y'all. What was already described sounded abusive to me anyway. So I'm just like, as soon as I read it turns abusive, I was just like, oh, what the fuck happened? Because, like y'all said, it sounds like something out of like a book or a Netflix series. Like, what the fuck? So anyway, it says Sharpe's control turns abusive. The relationship becomes fearful and non-consensual. So despite how ugly everything sounded before, the plaintiff is still saying that was fucked up, but it was more so manipulation than like a violation of my consent. But this shit was non-consensual. So Sharpe's aggression and rage continued to escalate to the point that plaintiff's friends began to fear for her safety. For example, when the plaintiff was with her friends, they could hear Sharpe yelling at her over the phone and would ask her if she was safe and if she was okay. In the summer of 2024, plaintiff and Sharpe each moved to Las Vegas for their own reasons. Sharpe liked to say that the plaintiff followed him to Vegas, but that too is a lie. Once in Vegas, Sharpe again insisted that the plaintiff sign an NDA. She refused, and again he persisted. But after enough resistance, he let it go and continued seeing her multiple times a week. His behavior did not change. He remained erratic, controlling, and verbally abusive, all while telling the plaintiff that he was committed to a sexually exclusive relationship with her. Then, in September 2024, Sharpe humiliated the plaintiff. He live streamed himself having sex with another woman on Instagram for over 1.1 million followers to see. He later made jest of the incident on his podcast, Club Shay Shay, and show Nightcap. But for plaintiff, it was anything but funny. He had repeatedly assured her that they were in an exclusive relationship, albeit unhealthy and abusive. This was a lie that not only hurt her emotionally, it made her fear for her sexual health and the risk of sexually transmitted disease. At this point, the plaintiff began to pull away from Sharpe. She stopped answering his phone calls and stopped telling him where she was when he would demand to know. Plaintiff's feeble attempts at freedom and independence further upset Sharpe. He began flooding her phone with calls, demanding to know where she was. He called relentlessly, multiple times per hour. The harassment became so unbearable that plaintiff frequently began leaving Nevada to determined to cut off communication. Determined to cut off communication, resist his efforts to control her, and attempt to reclaim some control of her life. It took courage for plaintiff to make this effort. She remained terrified, even though she was thousands of miles away. So this is another section where I'm like, okay, I still have more questions. Because like, all right, if you didn't move to Vegas to follow him, why did you move to Vegas? Just curious. Also, once again, pointing to the text message that suggested where there was an exchange of funds, it would make sense that if someone is giving you this much money to maintain a relationship with them, that you would follow them. That's a source of income at that point. But like, there needs to be some clarity behind that, because like you're saying this in a lawsuit, he's releasing these text messages that present a different picture. So at some point before this case is settled, resolved, that information is going to have to come out. So things are probably going to get uglier for Shannon Sharpe before they get better. Even if he is innocent of rape or of assault, at some point, that part of the whole situation is going to have to be explained. Why did she have to leave the entire state of Nevada to get away from this man? Like, was he following her throughout Las Vegas? Was he following her if she went to another city? Like, what exactly was happening to where she's like, I got to leave Nevada? And also, what was she doing for a living at the time where she was able to do that multiple times, like repeatedly? That's still something that hasn't been answered, because if she was working at a gym, what opportunity presented itself to say, hey, you work at a gym, but now there's a reason for you to move from Los Angeles to Las Vegas that has nothing to do with this rich man that you've been dating? You know what I'm saying? So all I'm saying, these questions are going to have to be answered. And it's the kinds of things that I think sometimes people don't think about before they file a lawsuit. Even if all this is true, even if all this is true, a lot of your business is going to have to come out for this to be resolved. That it's like, it's better if you control the narrative. I'm not saying don't file charges or don't file a lawsuit because of this, because that's a problem right now. There's a lot of women who deal with stuff like this and they don't say anything because they don't want their business to come out. I'm not saying like, oh, don't do it because your business might come out. I'm saying you want to control this narrative, because what it looks like to a lot of people who don't believe these accusations is, oh, she tried to file a lawsuit as a Jane Doe, and now she's being outed for what she really is. That's how people are looking at it. When in actuality, it could be that, like, no, she had a potential career as a professional trainer and an OnlyFans model, and there are different opportunities for both of those fields in Vegas, and that's why she went there. And this unhealthy relationship just persisted through it all. I don't know which one it is. All I know is that it might have, assuming, like, if she's telling the truth about everything, if she's telling the truth about everything, it would have been better for her to control that narrative than to allow Shannon Sharpe to put out information about her without her being able to present herself to the public as she wants to be presented. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, it continues. Sharpe would not accept independence or freedom, so on and so forth. So this is where it gets bad. October 6th, 2024. So we're talking about what, like 7 months ago? Sharpe sexually assaults and rapes plaintiff and threatens, I'm going to make it so no man will want you again. On October 6th, 2024, plaintiff was working out at a gym in Nevada. Following her usual routine. As she worked out, she saw Sharpe aggressively approaching her. She could tell by his look and the way he moved quickly towards her that he was furious for having been ignored. As soon as he got closer, he told her, "Sit the fuck down or I'm going to kill you." Plaintiff refused. "I don't want to talk to you. You cheated on me." His response was dismissive and controlling as usual. "You don't have a choice." Sharpe demanded that they talk in private. Again, plaintiff told him no. She made it clear she did not want to talk to him, be alone with him, or want him coming to her home. But Sharpe didn't care. He never took no for an answer. Sharpe forced plaintiff under threat to get into his car and go to her house. So once again, remember, we're talking about, at this point, 20, maybe 21-year-old woman. So yeah, like all the reasonable responses that you have in your mind of call somebody, do something, do this, do that, you're in a public place, take that out of your mind and just think about like a scared young person who's been threatened by an older, more powerful person and how they might respond. So once Sharpe was inside her apartment, plaintiff tried to keep the conversation in the living room, but Sharpe refused. He demanded they go to the bedroom. She said no. He didn't listen, nor did he care. Once inside the bedroom, Sharpe grabbed her from behind and forcibly positioned her to perform oral sex. He held her in place and then forced her to begin performing. He became even angrier and said, "You've disrespected me so much. I'm going to punish this asshole. I'm going to make it so no man will want you again." Plaintiff at this point was crying and sobbing. Tears streamed down her face as Sharpe repositioned her and took her from behind and inserted his penis into her anus. As he forcibly anally raped her, he said, "Turn around and look at me." This is the part where it got hard for me to read, y'all. So, deep breath. Sharpe grabbed her head, forcing her to look at him as she sobbed. He said at that point, "Look at this. Look at my arm. I've got chills. That's how good this is." Shannon Sharpe forced himself on the plaintiff and raped her, despite her sobbing in agony as it happened. He told her in the moment as she was crying that the experience was so good it was giving him chills. Sharpe's behavior demonstrates that he believed plaintiff to be his personal property, possessed and owned by him. He also believed that the laws did not apply to him, that he could take what he wanted, and that no one could or would stop him. He was and is wrong. So fast forward to January 2025. Sharpe sexually assaults and rapes plaintiff, ignoring her screams and refusing to wear a condom. On January 2nd of 2025, Sharpe told plaintiff he wanted to see her. So after this is, I guess, about 3 months have passed. Sharpe persisted and reminded plaintiff that he had a combined Christmas and birthday gift to give her, as he previously promised her a gift. She ultimately allowed him to come over to her apartment. She regrets that decision. Once inside her apartment, Sharpe began undressing. Plaintiff firmly stated multiple times that they would not have sex without protection, demanding that he wear a condom. She knew in the past that he refused to ever use condoms and believed that her demand would stop him from having sex with her. But although he refused to use a condom, he still insisted on sex. She tried to resist him. She screamed. She had already expressed concerns for her safety, knowing that he had been involved with other women, increasing the risk of transmitting a disease. The more she begged, Sharpe became more aggressive and made it clear he would not wear a condom and he was going to have his way with her. Sharpe grabbed her, pulling her around and positioning her to perform oral sex, which lasted for roughly 2 minutes. Sharpe then repositioned her and roughly forced himself inside her. Plaintiff never stopped demanding and begging that he stop or put on a condom. Sharpe ignored her. As soon as he penetrated her, plaintiff screamed and sobbed. Her cries for help did nothing to stop Sharpe. The assault lasted roughly 10 minutes, ending only when Sharpe ejaculated inside her. The plaintiff cried and begged repeatedly for him to stop. The plaintiff left Nevada after the assault. The plaintiff brings these causes of action in this honorable court to recover damages as outlined below. It is imperative that Shannon Sharpe and those like him are held accountable for their actions to prevent them from engaging in further sexual assault and sodomy and harming future victims. So it goes on to talk about, it mentions how the plaintiff sustained pain and suffering, psychological and emotional distress, mental anguish, embarrassment, and humiliation. Accordingly, plaintiff is entitled to recovery against defendant for the damages proximately caused by defendant's conduct in an amount to be determined at trial. And so that's where we get to the breakdown of the $50 million being requested by the plaintiff. So general damages in the sum in excess of 10 million, special damages in the sum in excess of 10 million, punitive damages in a sum in excess of 20 million, and statutory penalties in a sum in excess of 10 million. And you add all that up and it comes to 50. And yeah, that's pretty much that. So y'all can see why I said it was graphic. And why I asked on Twitter if y'all actually wanted me to read this out loud. So now I'm going to see what y'all have to say. I love weed as a Cavs fan. I love weed is just like all about the sports today. I love it. And says, Shannon being 56, chasing young tail is crazy. Like I said earlier, that's the issue that a lot of people have right now, is just getting caught up. Also says the way he talks with Ocho on Nightcap, who knows what to believe. Facts. Trick said, I beg your pardon. I'm not really sure what part you're referring to. So definitely come back and elaborate on that, and I would be glad to explain. So yeah, just once again, going back over, if you take what was said in this lawsuit and you take what Shannon Sharpe has said and what came out in those text messages, there is room for both of these parties to actually be presenting at least what they perceive to be a factual account of things, right? And so I say that to say, like, granting someone consent once does not give them like a blanket for consent. So let's say she just turned 20, you know, this old man, it's kind of a weird situation, but she's like, okay, maybe I should try something different in terms of dating. Or maybe he led with money and she's like, okay, maybe this is an opportunity for a come up. Whatever. Either way, she engages in interactions that she's like, it's kind of weird, but it's consensual. Like, I don't really like it, but it's consensual, right? Just because in the very beginning she was okay with it does not mean that anything that he did moving forward is okay. So it could be true that he was paying her $25,000 per cheek and giving her millions of dollars for this and that and so on and so forth. And then turned around in October and did exactly what this lawsuit says that he did. Like, they could both be telling versions of the same story that still paint him as a criminal who violates consent. But the way Shannon Sharpe has come out and talked about some of these situations, especially when he starts talking about the video that supposedly might come out. And he's saying that her attorneys intend to share part of it when they should actually share the whole thing. By the way, Steve Kerr is being interviewed right now. If anybody wants to watch that, like, let me know in the chat and I'll pull up the interview if y'all want to hear what he has to say about the game that just happened. But yeah, so Shannon Sharpe has made statements about a video that might come out, and he's like, oh, you're only going to put out part of it, put out the whole thing. So when he says that, he's suggesting that putting out the entire video would prove that whatever happened in that video was consensual. And that's what a lot of people are pointing to when they start talking about CNC, right? Like, as a couple of people have said in this chat, okay, Shannon, you are an older man who has enough life experience to know better. She never even signed an NDA. You have a lot to lose, at least based on this lawsuit. She doesn't. Even if CNC is your thing and you want to keep that a secret, and that is just how you get your rocks off, and in the past you've been able to find people who will comply either because they want to or in exchange for some sort of monetary benefit, whatever. Why would you be so foolish as to do it in this way? And so that's why when it comes to this situation, it's like, actually, let's make this a game notes segment. We're gonna turn this into game notes, because I feel like if we juxtapose this situation with, and I will make this make sense, Shadur's situation, there are life lessons that we can learn here. So let me do this intro, and then we're gonna make this game notes. All right. So game notes, where we take what's happening in the world of sports and we apply them to the real world, our lives. So both these situations are situations where things that would maybe normally be kept private end up being discussed publicly because of someone's notoriety, right? The thing is, even if there was an expectation based on past interactions of privacy, this was still foolish on Shannon's part, and he may never be able to bounce back. So let me juxtapose these two situations, Shadur Sanders and Shannon Sharpe. So in the case of Shadur Sanders, we have a situation with a young man who at at best, he was just ignorant of the process. He believed and trusted the wrong people, and because of that, he mishandled his pre-draft process, and now he regrets it, and he's looking back on it like, dang, I'm not gonna make those mistakes again. But you know what? I got it from here. Now I have the opportunity to prove myself. At worst, he's a cocky, arrogant little asshole who's just coming into the NFL thinking that everybody owes him something, and he absolutely needed to be humbled, right? Either way, in both of those situations, he has an opportunity to change the narrative, fix his image, and bounce back. Shannon Sharpe, at best, he's an idiot who clearly knew that an NDA should be signed in this situation, but neglected to have that done. And now he's being taken advantage of by someone who's 30 plus years younger than him, because he just couldn't control his dick. Dumbass. At worst, he's a fucking rapist. At worst, he's a manipulative, controlling piece of shit who decided to take advantage of a young woman who he thought was too young, too naive, and too desperate to do anything about the situation. Right? So, one, there's a huge gap between the best and worst cases for Shannon Sharpe versus the best and worst cases for Shadur Sanders. And when it comes to Shadur, because of his youth and because the accusations against him are not criminal, he has the opportunity to bounce back. But in the case of Shannon Sharpe, I don't care how you slice it or dice it. There's no way you come out of this clean. Because literally, in the best case scenario, he's still a dude who pays fucking teenagers for CNC fantasies. You can't go work for a fucking Disney company after that comes out. He's done at ESPN forever. Like he's not coming back. And then it's just like, even if that's your thing, is it worth sacrificing everything you've built? Literally days. Seriously, go and Google and look it up. Literally days before this lawsuit was publicized, the headlines about Shannon Sharpe were, oh, his contract with the volume just expired. He's entertaining $100 million offers. He's about to sign a new big deal. He's about to be the biggest thing ever in sports media. His interviews are blown up. And now is this. Now, what offers are on the table? Who really wants to be associated with him besides Ocho? Who really wants to be associated with him right now? Because, like I said, at worst, he's a fucking rapist. At best, he's a grown, what someone call old, I don't think it's old, but what someone call old ass man paying teenagers for CNC content. Once again, I don't kink shame. So that's the disgusted look on my face is not me saying that, oh, people shouldn't do this. It's me saying this was not smart. Look, I'm gonna be honest, a peek into the life of Jazz right now. My last relationship was an open relationship. And I am still uh, I'm still very good friends with my ex. I'm not dating right now, but he's poly. I have friends who are poly. And when it comes to hearing some of the kinkiest shit you will ever hear, you will hear it from poly people. So, like, I've heard it all. So, people paying for CNC stuff, I've heard it. I've heard about CNC race play, the shit some of the extreme furries be doing. It's whatever. But it's like they all practice discretion. They all vet their partners. They typically do things in like within communities where they can trust each other, right? And these are people who are not 50 something years old, who don't have nearly as much on the table to lose as Shannon Sharpe, whose image is not nearly as important. And even they are still careful for their jobs. And they're not out paying fucking teenagers. Like, I won't kink shame, but I will judge you for what's barely legal grooming and taking advantage of someone for their fucking youth. Like a lot of these parties my friends go to, they have an age limit. Like if you below a certain age, you can't even pay to get in. It don't matter. Don't matter what you look like, how much money you show up at the door with, you're not going. Um, so I say that also to say, like, fuck, there are options. There are options. Um yes, I did mention the $100 million deal. Clement says, interesting thought on plot twist by Skip Bayless. Wait. Oh, I missed this comment. Chris said the plot twist, Skip Bayless set all this up. Oh my God, that would be crazy. Skip has his own stuff to worry about. Skip is out here having a whole ass identity crisis. Skip Bayless tried to become a Cowboys content creator, and even that didn't work out too well for him, from what I can see. So I don't know what he's doing with his life. And JV agrees. Yeah, the team part, I just can't get over. Me either. And it's just like, once again, I don't kink shame. And if this were something where it just came out like, you know what, she was a young OnlyFans model, I was paying her for her services. Okay. And then what happened? I legit, I think I would legit have more respect for him if he was just like, look, she was a sex worker and I paid her, as opposed to, oh no, this was a relationship. Like I cared for her, and this is how we showed our affection to one another. Like, no, motherfucker, get somewhere, go somewhere with that. But no, I literally, that's the part that it's hard for me to get past, especially when I think about what was said in this lawsuit, because that's the age difference is what makes this make sense. Because me at my age, like him being a fucking creep like that, wouldn't have got my number. I wouldn't have been going to his fucking house. Like, fuck you. I whatever you got to offer, I don't need it that fucking bad. But like, I just think about, and I never went through anything like this at the age of 19, but I do think about some of the idiocy that I entertained. I do think about some of the stories I heard from friends at that age. And I think about, and like, I don't even know what this young woman looks like, but I just think about how, especially depending on what kind of like family situation they're coming from, what kind of situation that they might be in. Because think about it, if she's 19, 20 working at a gym, like there was no mention of her going to school, majoring in whatever, right? So we don't know what kind of situation she was in, how desperate she might have been for money, for attention, community, family, love, whatever, fellowship and love for anyone who's seen Sinners. Um, so we don't know what exactly he was taking advantage of. It might not have been just she was young. It could have been that she was young and desperate, young and dumb, young and looking for a way out, maybe from another abusive relationship. We don't fucking know. But either way, it's just like, all right, Shannon, let's say you have these kinks. Let's say this is how you get down. Leave the fucking teenagers out of it. Like, even if you want to date young, like, there's some good looking 20 and 30-year-olds out there who are freaky as all get out. Like, you have options besides taking advantage of someone who's like basically a child. You said, Jazz, do you know what the lean out competition was exactly? I don't know what it was exactly. In the lawsuit, it just said whoever could lean out the fastest. And if you're asking what leaning out is, um, it's typically when you're just trying to lose body fat. So a lot of people who really care about their aesthetic, they'll go through a cycle of losing weight and then gaining weight, ideally in the form of muscle, but you can't really gain all muscle. You're going to gain some, you're going to gain some fat too. So leaning out usually means like, all right, I've gotten bigger, I've gotten muscle under here, I know it. So now I got to lean out, take off the fat so you can actually see the definition in my muscle, right? So that's what that kind of competition would be. And I have my own thoughts on that, just because for the longest time I've suspected that Shannon Sharpe might be on steroids, in which case it would mean that he was cheating at such a contest. Um, let me see if I can find it again. That was in the very beginning, right? Introduction. Where was it? Maybe it was in the facts and allegation section. Oh, here it was. During the first conversation, Sharp proposed a challenge, a competition to see who could lean out faster. The prize? If plaintiff won, he would buy her fake tits. Plaintiff was stunned. The implication that she needed or wanted such a thing was widely inappropriate. Hearing it from a stranger more than 30 years her senior made it even more disturbing. Yeah, they never gave any more details about that, which is like, not even being nosy, but that's one of those other details that might have to come out as this case is investigated. So it's like, okay, so who won? Did he win? What was his prize? Did you win? Did he actually buy you fake tits? Was that the beginning of a relationship that was basically a series of financial exchanges? What exactly is the story there? So interesting. Get off. How do I get this off my screen? Whatever. Y'all are saying all athletes use testosterone or steroids in the 90s? Maybe. Today, too. I mean, yeah, we hear about so many athletes getting caught. I know this is a tangent, but it's just like, it's really weird to me when athletes get caught using performance enhancing drugs because it's like they're usually suspended for like 6 games. But even if they stop using, the results are still there. Like you can stop taking steroids and still benefit from having taken them for like however long, 6 months, a couple years. JV says the only reason I don't believe Shannon Sharpe was on steroids in the incident, Skip would have been the incident with Skip would have been a roid rage moment. Maybe not necessarily, but maybe. Um, but yeah, do y'all have any other questions about the lawsuit? Like, because that's pretty much where I am with it. It's just like, as much as Shannon Sharpe is saying, nothing he's saying actually negates what is in this lawsuit whenever you actually read it. Because it's not about one incident where he's saying, oh, it was consensual, and she's saying it wasn't. What the plaintiff is describing is a pattern. And so it is very possible that the relationship started off consensual. It could have started off as a consensual exchange of sex for money. And then on these 2 occasions, an assault actually happened. And so that's kind of like, I guess, my biggest hang up right now. I'm just like, fam, you're not really proving your innocence and you're just putting more and more information out there that's just making you sound worse and worse. And I can't imagine who would work with him. Like, is he already off the volume? Has that show already been cut, discontinued, suspended, any of that? Because I know his contract with them was up, but I didn't know if like the show was still going. Like I'd never watched him regularly. Like I would follow on social media and watch the clips and stuff. And I've seen enough to know that he's still doing content with Chad Johnson, but I don't know where he is with that. And then it's just like, even with people like Chad Johnson, I'm just like, how much does he know? Like has he read this? Has he heard any of what's in here? I don't know how many people have heard it because, like I said, it was hard for me to get my hands on this. It was harder for me to get my hands on this than it normally is for a lawsuit. So it's very possible that there are people in Shannon's circle who haven't heard these details and they just know his side of like, oh, she's trying to say it's kind of consensual. And then if you're somebody like Chad Johnson, you either have been or know other people who have been falsely accused, right? Like it was literally this time last year, we were talking about the situation with Dak and his accuser. So, like, this is a thing that does happen relatively regularly. So, if you don't have the details, I could see you being like, yeah, I'm gonna believe him in this. He says it was consensual, it was consensual. But it's just like, if you read something like this, I don't know how you don't at least side eye a person or make them explain. Like, yo, so when you said they need to put out the whole video, you saying this did happen, but it was consensual. Because that's what Shannon Sharpe is saying. He's saying what is described here did happen, but it was an act. Think about that. Think about what we read about her crying, what he forced her to do. That part. She's saying, I did not consent to this. He forced me. And Shannon is saying, nah, I mean, there's gonna be a video that shows that did happen, but I like I got consent. But he's still saying he was into this. And so how do you not at least side eye a motherfucker and be like, you know what? Until the tape comes out, maybe we should just put a pause on things. Maybe you shouldn't go on your Twitter posting about new merch. Like maybe we could take a break. Like it's a perfect time of year to take a break. Like we can take a break. Like let's just get some more details about this shit because you engaged in that willingly with a fucking 20-year-old. I need some time to think. Like how as a man, like do you not just be like, yo, just can we wait for some more details to come out? I love Weed says Ocho has CTE. We can always count on I Love Weed for the unnecessary and possibly inappropriate comic relief. Jesus. Chris said, Ocho not trying to mess up his bag. He ain't judging Unc. Maybe he should, but I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. JV says, I wasn't a supporter of Sharpe like that. I wasn't either. Chris says, one of my biggest regrets is not using roids when playing ball. Honestly, I'm going to tell you this. And this is something that I learned as a personal trainer. I Love Weed is heading to bed. Good night, I Love Weed. Thank you for the compliment. I appreciate it. I'm gonna say this, and then we're gonna probably hit 2 hours, and I'm gonna let y'all go. But I learned this as a personal trainer from other personal trainers who have worked with professional athletes. I'm putting that disclaimer out there because, like, I know I've done work with the Cowboys. I don't want anybody to think that I heard this in a locker room or anything. So I learned this from other trainers that apparently what some athletes will do is, while, like, if they experience an injury while they're injured is when they might get on a cycle of steroids, because one, it helps them recover faster, and two, they're less likely to be tested. I don't know how true that is. I've read the NFL's testing policy, so I don't know. But two, they're less likely to be tested, and three, they can get off, and by the time they're active again, they can still experience the benefits of steroids even if they don't continue taking them. So, like, let's say you take steroids for how many ever months, you benefit from muscle growth and the fast recovery, you're still going to reap those benefits for like a while. It still gives you a leg up on competition. So I just say that in response to what you said about not taking steroids when you play ball, Chris. Like, I'm not saying, like, there's a lot of risk to it. There's a lot of drawbacks. So for the people who already are making millions and they're like, I don't want this injury to fuck up my bag for the rest of my life. I don't want it to take my entire career away from me. I can kind of understand taking that risk. It's like 6-game suspension, but I get to come back and still be dominant. Okay, it's trade-off. And then, like, even with the health risks, it's like there's health risks to playing football. So it's just like, all right, if you've already decided to risk that, what's some unnatural hormones and shit really gonna do? Trix asks, is any of this proven? Are you talking about with the Shannon Sharpe thing? Is that what you're asking about? Or are you asking about the steroids thing? And then Chris said, from what I've seen, even if you're caught, it's not that bad. One of my lights went out. It makes a different view. So Trix, if you're talking about the Shannon Sharpe thing, so the allegations in the lawsuit have not been proven to be true. But from my perspective, and y'all can tell me if y'all have a different perspective, but from my perspective, Shannon Sharpe has, in so many words, admitted that it did happen, because when he was addressing the possibility of the video coming out, he didn't say that what happened in the video wasn't real. He was saying, hey, put out the whole thing because what happened in the video is consensual. So that's kind of what we were talking about a second ago, is that, like, okay, so he did do these things, but he's saying it was part of their relationship and them engaging in CNC. And the plaintiff is saying, no, there was no consent at all. There was no CNC. There was no plan for this. This is not something we did. This was him being a rapist. This was him raping me. So yeah, no, it hasn't been proven one way or another. But in terms of Shannon Sharpe making really bad decisions with barely legal people, that part has pretty much been admitted to. You're just hearing all this? Yeah, if you go Google Shannon Sharpe, there's probably something I missed. As a matter of fact, let me just do it before I get off here. And then I'm going to tell y'all what I meant on Twitter when I said this might be my last live for a while. So my work and professional situation is changing again. I've been doing this podcast for a few years now. And one of my biggest issues has been consistency. It's probably why I still don't have a bigger audience, and it's probably why I still struggle with certain things like keeping my lights on and technical difficulties and shit. Um, but essentially, the thing is, it is really tough to maintain consistency when you don't have stability, right? And going into adulthood, I didn't even know it was possible to go this long. Just so many years with having your life constantly changing, one thing after another, still searching for stability. I've had periods of stability, but like as far as like sustained stability for like a whole year, not really. You know what I'm saying? Um, and so I'm working towards that point. I'm working on some things, but it kind of means me shifting what my priorities are. So I'm not completely shutting down Bitches Love Sports, but I am shifting my focus. So I'm probably going to be doing more writing. I'm going to be doing more of like short videos, maybe. So that's why earlier I was like, follow me on TikTok, because like I really like the response I've been getting on TikTok. Um, People have been following me on there just because they like my takes. It's actually been pretty dope over there. And so I'm going to make more efforts to grow my audience even faster and even bigger. Um, but yeah, it's going to be a lot more writing. It's going to be a lot more shorts. And I don't know when I'll go live. There's still some interviews that I want to conduct with people that I have on my bucket list. But like, even the past couple of months, I've been trying to do it once a week. It might not be anything close to that. It might be months in between getting a live or a full length video from me. Unless it's like one of those, like the YouTube definition of a full length video is like 8 to 12 minutes. So it's like if I have something to really dive in on, like let's say more news comes out about this case, I might not go live, but I might turn on the camera, talk for 10 minutes, and then post it, right? Um, so I love chatting with y'all. I love going back and forth with y'all. So I do hope that I'm wrong and that I get to a point where I can go live sooner than I think. But otherwise, look, follow me on Twitter, interact with me there. Follow me on TikTok, interact with me there. Those are probably the platforms where I'll be most active for a while. And I'm working on something that'll make it easier for y'all to keep up with when I put out an article, when I put out another TikTok video, so on and so forth. So y'all don't have to jump around to different platforms and different websites. So I am working on that. Chris says you can't do lives on the go. Like whenever you have a thought in a few minutes, just pull your phone out and start dropping gems. I could, maybe. It depends. We'll see. If I do, it won't be like this where like I sit down for 2 hours. It might literally be like what you're saying. Like I'm at the gym in my car or out somewhere and I'm just like, yo, did y'all hear about such and such? So I'll consider it. But as I'm figuring that out, if y'all want to keep up with me, make sure you're following me on Twitter. So when I post a new article, you'll see it there. Make sure you're following me on TikTok, because there might even be some stuff on TikTok that never makes it to YouTube. Even if you have your notifications on, it just might not be posted there. So, yeah, I don't know. It's a very transitional period. We'll see how it goes. I just know I really gotta deprioritize stuff like this. But I did want to share this stuff about Shannon Sharpe as promised. There's some other content that I promised y'all, like the interview, the part 2 of the interview with Terrence Parsons that still needs to come out. So, and I don't know if that's going to be live or pre-recorded. We'll see. So you haven't heard the last of me. Just when I do start doing lives like this regularly again, I want to be in a place where I can do it consistently. And I want to make it like a good production for you guys. So let me just focus on life for a bit, focus on finding stability, focus on actually building this into something. And just know I appreciate y'all's support tremendously on whatever platform it's on. Like when I say I love my audience, I mean that like genuinely and sincerely. Like the reason I like going live is because of y'all. I love the comments that y'all leave in the chat. I love the interaction and I will miss it. But just bear with me here while I try to reprioritize and figure out life. So on that note, Chris said I like playing hard to get. You're so silly. I don't want to be hard to get at all. I would love to have an audience of thousands of people to make it a lot easier and more feasible for me to just keep doing this. But like, I don't get paid for this. And while I love it, especially in this economy, and they about to start making people like pay their student loans again and shit, I have got to make sure my paper is right. So that's where we are. But I mean, if all goes according to plan, I personally will at least be in a good position. Um, so let's just be grateful for that. But on that note, this has been a really dope interaction. If you are watching this on the playback and you have some questions or comments about the Shannon Sharpe situation or the Shedeur Sanders situation or anything else, drop them in the comments. And maybe that'll give me a reason to make another video and respond. But in the meantime, I hope y'all enjoy the week and all the draft and UDFA news and everything that's coming from the Cowboys or whoever your favorite team is. This has been a fun episode, despite the content. This has been a fun episode. So y'all have a good night. I'm your host, Jazz Monet. This has been another episode of Bitches Love Sports, and I'm out.
You only think of us as a bitches when you intimidated. Put it that way. I think
people look at a woman and she's an aggressive woman who's out to get what she wants to get. You know what I'm saying? Ambitious, and they want to say, you know, when a male is assertive, this is what he wants. He's looked at as a strong male, but yet when I get it, you know, I'm a bitch.
Exactly.
And if that's what I gotta be, exactly, to get what I want and to make it somewhere, then I'll just be there.